Welcome back to the Everything Was Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by our chief Newcastle United writer, Ryder, for a special episode. Overnight, the news broke that Newcastle United were in talks with an investor over a minority stake in the club in exchange to help fund what would be the stadium project. Lee was all over the story last night, all over the story today, and he's here to answer the key questions about this tale. Lee, welcome back to the podcast. Just give us a bit more detail on what you know and I guess what it means for Newcastle United going forward.
Yeah, so it's basically some investors have made the step forward to PIF to sort of express an interest in coming on board with Newcastle and eyeing up a sort of minority stake in the club, which it feels like it's all around the stadium. Basically, they want to be part of that. And, the stadium's always been something that PIF were never just going to fund the whole stadium. They were never just going to write a check and say that's for the stadium and it was all going to be about them. It was always going to be about partners, investors, sponsors. There was always going to be some kind of partnership going into that. Now, obviously, they haven't decided what they're going to do yet in terms of whether they rebuild St James's Park or move to a new home. There's obviously arguments for and against both of those scenarios, but at the minute, it's about conversations. There's no deals struck just yet, but they expect to potentially have an investor coming in, a stake in the club, but it feels like it's very much around the stadium at the moment.
I suppose there's a couple of key points to take away from this news. The first point being that PIF have not approached anybody, they've been approached, and that hopefully does calm down any questions over their long-term commitment to the club.
Yeah, I think that's what I was told, a month ago when there was rumours of Newcastle being up for sale for £1 billion. That was, played down completely. The message was PIF are 100% committed to the football club still. Then what followed was the sort of the roadmap to 2030, which included Newcastle as part of their portfolio. And then obviously we had the big meeting, didn't we, with the chairman flying in and holding talks about all manner of things, really. It was a proper, off-site meeting with talk about the future of the manager, talk about the training ground, the current training ground they're at now, the one that they hope to move to, the transfer window, budgets, all those things have been discussed. And as we reported on Sunday morning as well, there's since been follow-up meetings in London to discuss budget. So there's no sign of a lack of interest from PIF from what I'm seeing and from what I've been told. They remain fully on board with Newcastle United and want to take this project forward. So this would just be somebody else coming in. Where they come from, we'll have to wait and see, because those conversations at the moment, it's a willingness to have a conversation with potential investors. There's nothing sort of close. It's just a willingness to have that conversation and then move from there.
I guess the fact that they're being approached by this group of investors shows you just how well PIF and the Rubens have done growing the reputation of the club. We can only assume that these people who are wanting to invest are very, very wealthy individuals, very wealthy group, and they're going to pick their investments very wisely, very carefully, and they must be looking at Newcastle United and seeing something that they like, whether that is the commercial growth, whether it is the plans for the stadium or the plans for an extension, whatever it might be. They're clearly looking at Newcastle United and seeing something to put their hard-earned money into.
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is they want to have Newcastle's name up in lights in Saudi Arabia. I went to Saudi Arabia in 2022, and that's what the situation was. The Newcastle logo and the crest was, displayed around Riyadh. The Newcastle team were obviously there at that point, and they'd, made a brand new bus with Newcastle's logo over, so the team have their own travel over there. They were very invested and very interested, and obviously there's a Middle East fan base as well, not just in Saudi Arabia, right across the Middle East, and they obviously all came together for that game in 2022. My only surprise at the minute is that there hasn't been another game over in Saudi Arabia. I'm sure that will come in the future, but for Newcastle United fans, I don't think this is PIF trying to sell up or move the club on. That's just not what I'm being told at the minute. So it's going to be interesting. I think the stadium's very intriguing. We all want to know what's going to happen next. But it's the same with anything. You look at all the big stadiums that have been built around the world, and it hasn't just been a sort of one group thing. It's been investors coming together. You look at any stadium, there's always a sponsor, there's always a partner, there's always another investor, and I think that this is pretty much going to be more of the same.
I think it's just a nod to the good work they've done since they've come in and grown the club, not just on the pitch, but also off the pitch. And long may that continue. I mean, with the stadium, Lynn talks that if it was a new build, new location, potentially at Leazes Park, it would cost around £1 billion, which is obviously an eye-watering amount. Do you get the sense that although nothing's been made official publicly, that for the fact that there is someone at the table, even if it's just initial conversations, does that suggest to you that the plans for Newcastle United's home for the next generation are further along that than maybe we initially believed?
I think there's just a series of ongoing conversations about different options that the club have got. I mean, Brad Miller is the stadium sort of chief in terms of he came in for this project, and we haven't heard a lot from him publicly, but we do know he's been in all the meetings with PIF. He's, they had the survey, didn't they, about the stadium, what they could do, what they can't do, and it's pretty clear that there's only a limited scope what can be done at Newcastle. Now, obviously, they could they could on paper knock it down and start again at the same location. I don't know um, whether that's feasible. That would sounds like a very expensive way of doing it, but it's obviously been done with Tottenham Hotspur. Um, I think they want to make sure that the final project, whether it's a new stadium or a revamped St James Park, it's a good one. You don't want to just do it sort of. You could easily, you know, increase the Gallagher end, the capacity at the Gallagher end. You could easily do that, but I don't think they just want to do like a sort of partial gesture. They want to do something grand, spectacular, and we wait and see what that is. But yeah, it's been very much about patience, and fans want to hear more quickly. But I think Newcastle just trying to make sure they get it right.
I think that's the key point, isn't it? Getting it right, because it's such a big decision, both in terms of money, but also just the fact that it is St James's Park or a new build, whether Newcastle call home. Like the emotion invested in this from a fan perspective is absolutely huge. It's not a decision they can afford to get wrong. And like you said, everybody would like to know right now what's happening. But I've always been in the camp that they can take their time. Yes, I would love to know, but give them time to get this decision right. And I guess the fact that this story is broken, again, it's a nod to things happening in the background that aren't out there in the public. There'll be some people, and you see it on social media all the time, like, questioning the commitments of the owners, asking questions about what have they been doing all this time? How come we haven't heard anything? It's like, well, there will be wheels in motion in the background, but until there's something proper to release, there's no point doing it drip by drip. They'll be wanting to get everything in line, and when we hear something, it'll be a proper structured release, where there's a load of deal as opposed to just little bits here and there. And this, I think, is a nod to things happening in the background which aren't out there in the open at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen that with the current training ground with the the new sponsor there, which is going to kick in July, and obviously Newcastle have been putting a multi-million project behind the scenes. It's you go down to the media centre and there's builders everywhere. It's there is progress being made. Newcastle look like they're going to stay at Benton for another 3 years, and that's an example that they waited and waited to get a training ground sponsor. David Hopkinson come in and managed to get it done within 6 months, an 18 million deal. So fair play on that one, because that was one that a lot of fans were anxious about. They were like, why aren't we getting a training ground sponsor? The people that were there before couldn't do that. He's come in within 6 months and done it. So it feels like David Hopkinson's a guy who gets things done, and this stadium will be a continuation of that. I'm guessing, but I think he's not come to sit around. He's not come to be here for show. He's come here because he means business. So let's see, let's see where he goes from here with the stadium. And this news that sort of broke last night, that seems to be just part of that.
And that's the other reasons why there's probably been a bit of a delay. You've just got a new CEO who's come in and will want to read everything in detail, whether that be the survey that you mentioned, and there's obviously if the idea is to move to Leazes Park, and there's all the red tape you've got to get around there, because it's not just a case of picking up a spade and putting it in the ground. There's a lot of things and hoops you've got to jump through before you even get to the stage of putting an application in. So there's plenty of reasons to why it's been delayed. And again, if it comes to the right decision made, then I'm all for taking their time. But I think people will be really intrigued and really excited about what you said there, that the owners don't just want to do a kind of a stopgap job on the stadium. Like, if they're going to rebuild it, if they're going to build a new one, it's going to be, we think and understand, kind of one of the best arenas in the world. That's what they're aiming for. That's what the Public Investment Fund want. That's what the Rubens want. And we saw some artist imagery a couple of weeks ago, or last week, sorry, about how it might look. And I don't know about you, but looking at those images, I think it got fans excited, and that is the kind of new build they're going for. I think a lot of people would back that.
Yeah, I mean, the images from what the club are saying, they were the initial drafts. So it does seem that while they are accurate, they are quite dated as well. So we don't know if the new ones are going to be even better than that. I mean, I'm led to believe that there are new images there, but obviously they haven't hit the public domain. Again, the club, what I've been told from people in the communications sort of department at the club, are they want to have a grand unveiling when this is ready to go. They want it to be spectacular. They don't like sort of leaks sort of coming out. They want to see a big illustrious sort of presentation of this when it's ready to go, and that's what they're working towards. I think there's probably been frustration from people that have come and gone now at the club, that they wanted to be there when it did get presented. But you can go back to what Brad Miller said probably a couple of pre-seasons ago now, just when Newcastle came back from Japan, and he said, we only want to write one check. We only want to make this is a once in a lifetime decision for the football club. It's going to be historic, and they want it to be a spectacular announcement. So we have to wait patiently to see what comes next. For me, there's never been any doubt that Newcastle need a bigger stadium. There's a lot of people that are happy, but it's people who want to get a season ticket. It's, things have moved on even since the takeover. People have got a young family. They want to bring their kids to St James's Park. They want to sit alongside their sons and daughters and enjoy the experience together. And at the minute, they can't do that because there's limited room. There's a waiting list opening up, but I think there's only going to be 250 tickets available, 250 seats available. Maybe a few more, I don't know, but it's very difficult to get a season ticket at Newcastle now. It goes back to it's gone back to what it was like in the 90s, before we went up to 52,000, when I think we were 36,000. and it was pretty much an all-season ticket gate every game, and it was impossible to get in the ground. So you were very lucky if you had a season ticket, and it feels like that now. You're lucky if you've got a season ticket. I know there's been a couple of games this season where there was a few tickets available, walk-up gate, but realistically, if Newcastle make 4 or 5 signings this summer, you'll not be able to get a season ticket because people are going to be excited about what comes next.
Yeah, the need for more seats is very, very clear, isn't it? It's going to be so interesting to see what they do end up doing. Is your understanding, Lee, that the plans with the stadium aren't connected to this investor coming on board? Like, whatever they decide to do, stay and expand or leave and build a new one, those plans will go ahead, and it's kind of a bonus, for want of a better phrase, that an investor will come on board and help fund it. It's not dependent on that new investor.
I don't think so, but I mean, we can't get too sort of carried away because this investor has not arrived yet. At the minute, it's just talks. There's no guarantee that anyone is going to come through. There's just a willingness to talk at the minute, but there's plenty of people who are interested in doing so. So I think it will unfold in the coming weeks and months. But I think, to be honest, I think David Hopkins has said it in his early interviews. When he first met PIF, he said, "You must be frustrated because I think it was a £1 trillion wealth fund. They've got a lot of money to invest, but because of the rules, because of what has been PSR, what is now SCR, going into the new sort of era of finance in football, you can only spend so much. Newcastle know going in this window, they're going to have to probably sell 2 or 3 players to bring in 3 or 4. And that's the frustration, I think, for PIF. But they're determined to play by the rules, and, they're not going to get into any sort of trouble or anything like that. They want to do it right. And, it's going to take time. And it goes back to revenue. Newcastle needs... You can only spend what you earn, and Newcastle need to earn more. The commercial window is wide open for them to go and do that. They're trying to do that. And the next set of figures are going to be intriguing in terms of finances.
Yeah, certainly so. And, a brand new stadium or an expanded St James Park will certainly help with those revenue streams. Big thanks to NordVPN and Saily for sponsoring the Everything is Black and White podcast. Big thanks to Lee for popping on and providing his insight into the news that Newcastle United are in initial talks with an investor who will get involved if they do sign up and help fund the stadium project. Do get in the comments, let us know your thoughts on anything that Lee or I have discussed today, and check out our YouTube channel and podcast stream later in the day as well for a special Q&A with Lee and Sean, pretty much all based around transfers. Well worth a watch or listen. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys very soon.